So let's start with Arana's talk. So now Aruna will talk about HRT and sub-region complexity in multi-boundary island model. And Aruna is from Shah Institute of Nuclear Physics, Kolkata. So uh, I hand over to Aruna to start the talk.
Yeah, thank you. So, firstly, I'd like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity of presenting my work in this nice workshop. So, I'll talk about the title of my talk is HRT and subregion complexity in multi-boundary island models. And this is an ongoing work with Subhashachi Maulik, Christian Norte, and Shivaji Roy. So, let me begin. So this is the outline of my talk. I'll firstly, given the time constraint, I'll be brief about most of the things. I'll firstly very briefly mention what multi-boundary wormholes are, specifically in ADS3. Then I'll talk a little bit about the toy models that have been described to rather model the island scenario. Then I'll talk about the volumes or what Pratim talked yesterday about, which is called subregion complexity volumes below the RT surfaces. And then I'll go on to realize the results in kinematic space and some future directions. So multi-boundary wormholes in ADS3, to discuss about these things, let us firstly remind ourselves that we know that empty ADS3 as a solution of Einstein's equation with, of course, constant negative curvature has maximal amount of symmetry, and any other solutions in ADS3 can be realized by removing symmetries and introducing certain isometries through quotienting or bifolding the empty ADS3 time slice. So multi-boundary wormhole geometries in ADS3 are typically realized as geometries for which at each of the exits of the multi-boundary wormhole there lives asymptotically ADS spacetime, which is dual to a CFT, and all these CFTs are independent of each other, and they are connected through this wormhole. And this is realized by removing semicircles from a time slice of empty ADS3, which can also be done for BTZ. Let me talk a little bit about that, which is what we do is to take a Poincare upper half plane for empty ADS3, and we remove two concentric semicircles. So, and the region between these two concentric semicircles is called the fundamental domain of the BTZ. So we avoid the blue point in here, which is a fixed point. And if we avoid the fixed point, we have well-defined curvature everywhere in our fundamental domain. And in this picture, the bifurcation horizon, which we'll call as throat horizon, is simply this dotted line. The orientation of these while removing these semicircles from an empty ADS3 time slice is also important. For example, in BTZ, you have to remove the two semicircles, concentric semicircles that you remove have to be of the same orientation, and there is a single throat horizon. So now if we go on to talk about three boundary wormhole. So in case of BTZ, the two boundaries are these things that I have mentioned as A and B in this picture. And if we go to now a three boundary wormhole, we have to again remove two semicircles from one of these two boundaries, either from A or from B. And these two newly removed semicircles have to be of opposite orientation. And there are three throat horizons for this three boundary wormholes. One is, of course, the horizon that we had earlier, which we call to be L1. There is this is one exit, this part between C1 and C2, and the throat horizon corresponding to that is we call as L2. And these two sides of in the right hand side of the concentric smallest semicircle and in the left hand side of the concentric biggest semicircle, they constitute your third exit, and the horizon, throat horizon, is realized by this left and right part. So one can show that the length of these different, all these throat horizons can be tuned independently, and it has been very recently again shown from a killing vector perspective for Lorentzian three boundary construction, which was done by Caceres, Kundu, Patra, and Shashi in recent work. In these models, they have also mentioned how to realize a genus in this, or how to introduce a genus or whole in this wormhole models. So the way you do that is to again associate two semicircles removed from two different sides of this concentric smaller semicircle, and again they have to be of opposite orientation. So but if you do so, the thing that happens also happens is whenever you introduce a new genus in your solution, your boundary, number of boundary decreases by 1. So in this case, for example, we started with the two boundary wormhole and we removed two semicircles from different sides of the concentric semicircle. And now we have actually 2 minus 1, so only one boundary and one genus. So in this paper, the authors talk about a general in-boundary and G-genus wormhole construction. So now let me go on to talk a little bit about the multi-boundary wormhole models that, or rather toy models that try to describe the island. So I'll firstly talk about, for the results that I'll come back to in the last part of my talk, I'll be generalizing or talking mostly about the in-boundary wormhole case that was introduced by Akers, Engelhardt, and Harlow last year. And so in this case, they deal with different snapshots. Of course, they consider that at each time step, one exit increases for the multi-boundary wormhole. And so it is not really a good idea to look at this model from a really dynamical perspective, but what we can say is that the topology change at each unit of time or each time step and each snapshot that we look at is a valid time reflection symmetric scenario. So if we, let's say, if we start from a n+1 boundary wormhole, rather we should, maybe we should start from a 3 boundary wormhole. And in this case, one of the exits will be much larger than the other two exits. And this larger exit is modeling my evaporating black hole, whereas the smaller exits model the Hawking quantas radiated by the evaporating black hole. And with time, the number of such smaller exits keep increasing, whereas the bigger black hole that was evaporating these smaller black holes keep decreasing in size. So we start from a single pure state black hole, bigger exit, and it keeps shrinking. So this is a picture that sort of will help us to realize the thing that we are going to discuss. In this case, we have these three exits. Let's say they are modeling the Hawking quantas. And so there are two homologous candidate HRT surfaces. So I should mention that in this model, we since the radiation part is also modeled by smaller black holes, we don't really consider the bulk entanglement entropy part in the quantum extremal surface, and HRT surfaces are enough to give us an analog of island. So it so happens that for the initial time, also another assumption that we make, while since I already mentioned that all of these throat horizons can be tuned independently of each other, we assume that we make all the smaller horizon lengths to be small n, which is far less than the beginning length of this bigger throat horizon, which let's say it was L0, and at some point it is L0 prime when we have three smaller black holes or radiation Hawking quantas. So to compute the entanglement between this combination of the Hawking quantas and the black hole, there are two candidate HRT surfaces, which are the combination of these throat horizons or this green dotted bigger black hole throat horizon. So in the early time, the combination of these throat horizons are the minimal choice, whereas since this L0 prime keeps decreasing with time as it evaporates more and more smaller black holes, the L0 prime keeps decreasing, and at some point, which let's say we call it page time, or rather, since n, or the number of smaller exits, is the analog of time in this model, let's say we would have some n page value at which this this green HRT surface will be preferred over the combination of smaller HRT surfaces. And this can be the way they have done this is by using energy conservation or energy entropy relation in ADS3, and by using this relation one can reproduce a page curve in this model. So primarily the NL length, which was the combination of the smaller horizon lengths, it keeps increasing, and after the n page value, which is near 10, it starts decreasing. It goes to 0 when the black hole completely evaporates, bigger black hole, or rather L0 prime becomes 0. So now let me go on to talk about what I would talk about mainly is the volume dual to this throat horizons or HRTs that we consider to be the HRT surfaces at different times. So we'll consider different volumes at different times. And as Pratim already discussed yesterday, Alisha here proposed, motivated by the complexity equals volume proposal by Susskind, Alisha here proposed that the volume below the HRTs are supposed to be dual to the mixed state complexity. And in ADS3, the volume change due to some same choices of boundary region, but if you what Rob already mentioned, if you keep increasing the size of the disjoint boundary subregions of the CFT, then at some point your choice of HRT surface becomes the connected one from the previous disconnected one, and the change of volume in this phase change, which is in entanglement entropy, it is a smooth transition, like a page-like transition. But in the volume, there is a jump of 2 pi in case of purely ADS3, and this issue was addressed in this paper by Edminger and collaborators, and they worked out that this for most of the cases, they also talked about BTZ black holes and two choices of HRTs that are present in that case, and in both of the cases, they found out that this change is purely due to topological reasons. And since I said that the volume that we are computing is the volume below the RT surface or HRT surface, it can also be written using the Gauss-Bonnet theorem. And the result looks, specifically in 3 dimensions, the result looks like it involves a geodesic curvature term, which is integrated over the RT surface. And it involves Euler characteristics of the bulk region that I am calculating volume of. So, and as I mentioned, a smooth transition in entanglement entropy plot, depending upon the choice of HRT at different times, corresponds to a finite 2 pi jump in the subregion complexity plot due to the change of the Euler characteristic. So let us, this is again something that Pratim talked about yesterday, at least this figure. Let's say this is the red part, it is my subregion A, and this is my some UV cutoff. I define some UV cutoff epsilon, and this is my minimal surface. So I intend to calculate the volume of this region, and in ADS3 one can write this simply in terms of the curvature integral over the this volume, and using Gauss-Bonnet theorem, it can be written in terms of the geodesic curvature and the Euler characteristics of this volume. So for example, in this case, we have Euler characteristics 1. If we have 2 disjoint subregions like this, we would have Euler characteristics 2, and it will keep increasing as we have more and more disjoint subregions. But what happens is, again, if we had, say, X1 and X2 as 2 different subregions or disjoint subregions, if we keep changing the size of X1 and X2, the initial HRT surfaces are this gamma 1 here and gamma 1 here. But at a later time, if we keep increasing the size of x1 and x2, this connected HRT surface becomes the preferred one or the minimal one. And for this one can write that the complexity, subregion complexity can be written purely as the boundary lengths x1 and x2 over epsilon, my UV cutoff. So this is a UV divergent quantity, and the finite part is simply minus 2 pi, which comes due to corner terms coming from geodesic curvature. So these geodesics hit the boundary with a corner angle pi by 2, and the Euler characteristic. So if you there are two angular contributions, one coming from the Euler characteristics and the other coming from the corner angle that these geodesics make with the boundary. Again, in case of BTZ black hole, if you keep changing the mass parameter of the BTZ black hole, then you can have two different HRT surfaces for a long enough subregion in the boundary. One is which simply doesn't wrap around the black hole, but this one is sort of gamma 2 is sort of the disconnected one, because it doesn't cover it includes this gamma 1 region, but it doesn't it also includes this different color region, but it doesn't include the black hole in middle. So they have also showed that in this case also the connected part is, of course, you can see that in this case the disconnected situation where we have a black hole in middle, the volume looks bigger, and in this case this would be the C2 phase, and again the volume change is simply a 2 pi. So now coming to the volume dual to the multi-boundary wormhole model that we were discussing. So we deal with the multi-boundary wormhole model by using lessons from the topological complexity results, and we will see that the role of the Euler characteristics, again, it has been discussed in other papers working with subregion complexity as well, that this role of Euler characteristics in ADS3 can be replaced by considering hyperbolic triangles and polygons in the bulk. So, for example, okay, I'll come back to this later. And so each horizon can be, that we talk about, the throat horizons that we talk about in the multi-boundary wormhole model, they can be thought of as bulk minimal geodesics connecting two boundary anchored geodesics. So, and again, since I mentioned that any geodesic will have, will be perpendicular to the points that it is connecting, and so it will be perpendicular to the removed semicircles as well. So in this case, for example, L1 is one of my throat horizon, and this is perpendicular to both of these geodesics. Again, L3L is perpendicular to these two parts, these two geodesics that I have removed. And similarly, all of these throat horizons are perpendicular to the point they are connecting, And so what we do is primarily we compute the volume of this region, which is the volume below our primarily chosen HRT surface. And at a later time, we add this rayed region to it, or technically speaking, the actual way to do it is not adding it, but the computation is a little bit different, which I'll not be able to talk in general. But if I talk about adding this part, I can say that this looks like a hyperbolic octagon. So this has 8 angles, all of which are, since all of these are pi by 2, because all of these are the lengths are simply the throat horizons, which are bulk geodesics. And so all of the angles, corner angles, would be pi by 2. So this is for computing the volume. So the change can be computed from the computing the volume of the hyperbolic triangle, which is actually simply in hyperbolic geometry. The volume of such hyperbolic polygon is given by the angles themselves. For example, a hyperbolic triangle, the area in this case, which we call volume, which is actually the area of a hyperbolic triangle, would simply be pi minus the angles that it makes. So, but for the UV divergent part, we also this volume of the hyperbolic octagon will give us the amount of jump. But for the UV divergent part, we also need some actual values of the boundary values, and we use results from Caceres's paper and Caceres and collaborators paper, and use the boundary length information from there. And at each step, we keep introducing new boundaries by removing two same radius semicircle of radius r prime. But say in the first step, in this picture, we had removed two smaller semicircles of radius r, and the concentric semicircles are of radius r0 and lambda r0. And as time goes, so this bigger black hole is evaporating, so lambda decreases with time. Now, since lambda decreases with time, this radius also decreases. And to introduce newer exits, I have to keep introducing or keep removing r radius semicircles from this side. And to do so, we have to consistently do so, we have to keep changing the radius of this smaller semicircles that we remove with time at each time step. So the way we do that is to make sure that when lambda prime r0 is decreasing, since the bigger black hole is evaporating, the rate it decreases, we should decrease the radius of the smaller semicircles more with a more increasing rate, so that we can accommodate larger number of smaller semicircles in a decreasing lambda prime r0. And again, we use while calculating explicitly things, we use the lengths given for the smaller horizons. We use the lengths given in the Caceres paper, which can be related by d over r. So from our assumption, what we assumed earlier is also that we keep introducing newer exits with same L2 or same length throat horizon. So in our construction, we make sure of that by saying that we change the d value in the same way, or the distance between the centers of this removed semicircles in the same proportion as we decrease the r value with newer semicircles removed. So d over r remains constant, and L2 is consistently, it remains same. So what we find is that the subregion complexity follows a Gaussian curve, and at page time, the new HRT surface has different corner angles, contributing again to the volume, and this corner angles or the extra volume comes from the hyperbolic polygon that I mentioned, which will be a general hyperbolic polygon for n-boundary wormholes. For a 3-boundary wormhole, though, it will be a hyperbolic octagon. And note that both choices give Gaussians the peak, but the peak is not at n page, or the page value of the n. The peak of the Gaussian is not at that value. So just to be a little more clear about what I mentioned by hyperbolic triangles, in here, since these are 3 geodesics, one corresponds to this x1, x2 interval, one corresponds to x2, x3 integral, and the other corresponds to x1, x3 integral. So we can think of it being the connected phase, or analog of the connected phase. In this case, both of this geodesic and this geodesic, the corner angles are pi by 2. So this angle is actually 0. And so this is a hyperbolic triangle for which all these different angles are 0, and your pi will simply be the area of the hyperbolic triangle, which is actually written in terms of pi minus alpha plus beta plus gamma, which are these angles, smaller angles. And in this case, all of them are 0. So it will simply be pi. It will behave like a triangle that we know in flat space. There are also, if we had n such regions, there is, again, in this case, C over 12 is considered to be the pi, and then this case c over 12, if you again take it to be pi, it can also be represented as pi, and depending upon n values, you can say what are the new volumes that are being added. So what we find is at page time, this both of these candidate HRT surfaces give me a Gaussian, but at page time, this subregion complexity plots shift from one Gaussian to another Gaussian, where there is a small jump at this point, and this jump is simply the volume of the hyperbolic polygon that we are considering, that we are adding to, and this has to be a constant jump, at least at the page time. So to see how universal this jump is, so again, let's say again, similar to what Edminger and collaborators found, we find that at the transition point of the entanglement entropy, there is a jump. But in case of a multi-boundary wormhole model, this jump is comes out to be for n+1 boundary wormhole, where there are n smaller exits. The volume jump at page time becomes 2 pi n. And again, there are other models which of involving multi-boundary wormholes, in which people actually, instead of considering n smaller exits, they consider 2 smaller exits. So the bigger black hole exit decreases by evaporating, and these 2 smaller exits model my Hawking quantas. And these exits keep increasing as more Hawking radiations get stored in the smaller exits. So this would be a model in which we would say, let's say, it will be a 3-boundary wormhole model. And in this case, again, one finds that, say, for example, from the radiation side, the primary choice of HRT surface will be this gamma 1 plus this gamma 1. Whereas at later time, since this black hole is evaporating and these gamma 1s are increasing, whereas this throat horizon is decreasing with time. So at a later time, this will be the preferred HRT surface, and a new volume will be added. And in this case, as I mentioned, in case of 3-boundary wormhole, the thing that gets added is a hyperbolic octagon. And so the jump of volume at page time would be simply a 4 pi. 2 pi n was my general result. So I'd simply put n is equal to 2 in there. And the corner angles are coming from a hyperbolic octagon. So as I mentioned, so what we are now trying to do is to understand these things from the kinematic space perspective, where so in ADS3 CFT2, bulk areas and volumes can be reproduced in terms of boundary entanglement entropies using all the bulk geodesics that connects the 2 points in the boundary or in the bulk. It can also be bulk. So the area corresponds to the number of boundary anchored geodesics crossing. It can also be a bulk area, to be specific. To be more precise, it can also be a bulk area, and the number of boundary anchored geodesics that crosses this bulk area can give me the area of the bulk curve that I am considering. And we have to also consider it can be a complicated bulk curve. So one geodesic can have multiple intersections. The number of intersections is also important to consider. And again, Edminger and collaborators, so this area construction was done by, put forward by Chek and Sully. And the volume contribution was figured out by Edminger and collaborators, in which they said that the volume is contributed by the number of geodesics that are partly or fully in the volume region that we consider, and their chord lengths in the volume that we want to calculate. The multiplied version of these things can give me the volume of any bulk curve, the volume enclosed by any bulk curve. So what we want to look at is which set of geodesics contribute to the area and volumes in multi-boundary wormhole model at different times. And to do so, more specifically, what we are interested in, so what set of geodesics give me this constant volume change, either 4 pi in case of a 3-boundary wormhole or 2n pi in case of a n-boundary wormhole. So we haven't yet got to that, but just let me say, the way we represent kinematic space is you take a MTADS3 time slice and you can denote any boundary subregion by 2 angles. which are this opening angle and this wideness angle, which are alpha and theta. And in the alpha theta coordinates, so let's say if I want to compute the length of this bulk curve, I have to consider all the boundary anchored geodesics crossing this bulk curve. And in kinematic space or alpha theta coordinates, this length of this bulk curve is given by integrating this volume or this shaded volume of the shaded regions. And any point in the bulk would simply represent a set of geodesics again, all the geodesics going through that particular point, and it will be in general represented by a line in the kinematic space. So if we have 2 points, we have 2 overlapping lines, and the region enclosed by them is, if you integrate that with alpha and theta, then you will find the length of this curve. Again, in the same way, volume can also be found out. If the curve was a closed one, then we can also compute volumes by considering this boundary anchored geodesics and their chord lengths. So for example, in the case of BTZ, what we do, we are interested in, say, this is the throat horizon, dotted red throat horizon L1 that we are considering. And in this case, any geodesics, the length of this geodesic is given by any geodesic crossing this part. And this is simply represented by this shaded region. And if we want to compute the volumes, volume of this below this yellow line, we have to consider all different sort of geodesics that can contribute to the volume below this yellow line. And there are different sets, of course. The geodesics which cross this curve will of course contribute to the volume as well, but there are other geodesics which do not cross this or which do not contribute to the area but contributes to the volume. For example, this one and a set of different colored geodesics, which are again, this is a single geodesics which is represented by a point. The purple geodesic is a set actually. There can be other geodesics which will be similar to the purple one, and the set of purple geodesics are represented by these regions, which are represented in, or rather, should I say purple or pink, whatever. This is the pink regions, and again the purple ones would be these ones. And we can again see the purple ones would have an overlap with the ones crossing the throat horizon. Simply, if you take a purple geodesic from here to, let's say, here, that will again cross the contribute to the area as well as volume. So there is a overlap of these two regions in here. So what we intend to do later is to again introduce or remove different semicircles from here and see exactly which set of geodesics contribute to the change of the volume, the constant volume rather, which is a 2 pi n or 4 pi in case of 3 boundary wormhole. So the lessons that we take, coming to the conclusion part, the lessons we take from this is we derive a page curve analog plot for a subregion complexity from the radiation perspective. Again, it can also be computed from the black hole perspective. You have to just compute different volumes. To be precise about this point, that although entanglement entropy is same for the black hole and radiation, since we are computing the entanglement between the black hole and the radiation, but the complexity is not in general going to be same, since the black hole state and the radiation state are not equivalent at each of the time. And from the black hole side, if you had computed the same subregion complexity plot, the jump that we find in case of radiation volume, it would be a dip in case of a black hole volume. So another point is that the analog of islands or the hyperbolic polygons that were added later lie in the entanglement shadow region, which is behind all the throat horizons. And it was argued by many of the papers, one of which I also wrote a paper recently, in which I argue that this, from a pure radius perspective, this entanglement shadow, or rather the analog of islands, are dual to the multipartite entanglement of purification in multi-boundary wormhole models. And so, since entanglement of purification is given by the length or the boundary length of the things constituting the island, then the natural question that arises is, since we have computed the volume of this island region as well, which is a constant thing. So is it so that the multipartite complexity of verification, if I take the length area to volume correspondence seriously, then does it correspond to multi-boundary or multipartite complexity of verification? Another question regarding this would be to be more concretely design the entanglement of purification and quantum error correction connections, and it can also strengthen our understanding of the island and quantum error correction connections. So the last thing that I will end with is these are some plots that were generated in the paper that I previously mentioned of Edminger and collaborators, in which they reproduce the 2 pi jump in the subregion complexity corresponding to a smooth transition in entanglement entropy using tensor. So we wonder if of island regions or multi-boundary wormhole jumps can also be reproduced by some tensor network study where, for example, in this model, they embedded the BTZ two-sided, rather not two-sided, but one-sided BTZ metric on a 2D Ising model and considered tensor networks and computed the number of tensors corresponding to the minimal surface and below the minimal surface for the volume. And they also reproduced this jump in the volume plot from tensor network. So it might also give us a better understanding of the island from a tensor network perspective. So other ways to, other things that we can do is to how can these different models be better understood dynamically. Of course, again, we say that this has to be discrete dynamics since the topology change cannot be really considered in or tracked by Einstein equation as an Einstein equation solution. And we want to do it from a purely construction point of view or Killing vector perspective, which Caceres and collaborators did. And this is an ongoing discussion and work with Arnab Kundu and Ayan Patra. And regarding what Pratim talked about yesterday, I also wonder if this kind of jump in subregion complexity can also be derived from a subsystem action complexity proposal that they have worked on. Again, the last thing that I have mentioned is this thing, or we calculated the subregion complexity in a model where we have only HRT surfaces. We don't really have quantum extremal surfaces to say. So in a case involving quantum extremal surface, can subregion complexity be calculated? That is a question we need to, maybe we can think about it, although it is really hard since it is not very easy to think about those regions, since there is no systematic description of how to have an analog of the bulk entanglement entropy part in the quantum extremal surface as some the analog, what would be the analog in the subregion complexity things. Okay, so I'll end at this point. Thank you.
So thanks, Aruna, for the interesting talk.